Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Adegoke. South Africans are celebrating the life of renowned human rights lawyer and anti-apartheid activist George Bizos, who died on Wednesday at 92. His family said he died peacefully at home of natural causes. The Greek-born South African lawyer was noted for representing former President Nelson Mandela at the Rivonia trial in the 1960s. He instructed Mandela to add the qualification, if needs be, to his trial address, which is credited with sparing him from a sentence of death. He is also credited to have represented families of anti-apartheid activists killed by government during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission hearing. Among the many tributes pouring in his honor is that from President Cyril Ramaphosa, who described him as one of the lawyers that contributed immensely to the attainment of South Africa's multiracial democracy and a key architect in the drafting of the nation's constitution. A few years back, our South Africa Bureau Chief spoke to him on a number of issues where he talked about the significance of respecting and not attempting to manipulate the Constitution, especially by politicians in any nation.
The Constitution is clear, and the courts have interpreted it correctly. There are politicians, businessmen, some ordinary people who want to interpret the Constitution their way. The last word is the Constitutional Court. If they have any complaint, they must follow the example of Nelson Mandela. He lost in court, as I said, and he immediately went and said, yes, I lost, I was wrong, I'm sorry, I obey the orders of court. And this is something that we should really embrace rather than finding reasons for saying that the Constitution is not serving us well.
Let's now speak to our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Debia, concerning this. Hello, Betty. Tell us what's the mood in the country at this time. Lots of people have been reacting to the news of his passing.
Yes, all through the days and yesterday when the news came out that he had passed away. A lot of tributes, that's all we've been hearing. And families of those he had helped, families of those he had stood by, just paying tribute. Some of the qualifications that, they're calling him a towering giant. Chris Honey's widow, named Paul Honey, referred to him as the most decent human being. His daughter referred to him as a loving man, a very loving man, a loving giant. And different families, you heard the president's tribute as well. So it's all been good. He was involved not just he never got involved in politics, but human rights activism, supporting people through families of victims during the TRC hearings. And also he was involved in education. He was the co-founder of the Saheti School here in South Africa, here in Johannesburg, and they paid tribute as well. He was involved in the media, not as a media person, but some of the media houses where he played a role of supporting and advising as well. So it's all been tribute. People are sad, but he would have been 93 in November. So there's a time to be born, a time to die. They've accepted he was old, and as the president said in his tribute, he had been ill for some time, and then he died peacefully in his sleep, which is how many people I know would want to go with their families as well.
Yeah, like you said, there have been many tributes to him, one from President Ramaphosa talking about his contribution to the, multiracial democracy of South Africa. Do we know of any plans from the government to honor him?
I know he'll definitely be honored, but nothing has been said right now. I guess they're waiting for the family to take the lead. So whatever the family says will happen regarding probably his funeral, but I know that the contribution he made in the country, everybody knows that. Different sectors, they're all unanimous in the contribution that he made. So we probably after the family has said what is going to happen regarding his funeral and probably burial, then maybe the government will. But I know definitely the government in this country will honor Mr. George Bezos.
All right, then, Betty Debia, our South Africa Bureau Chief, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
Well, some of South Africa's biggest retailers have removed products made by Tresemme following a row over an advert that has been condemned as racist. The original advert for Tresemme product that was promoted by retailer Clicks had pictures of African hair labeled dry, dull and damaged, while an example of white hair was described as fine and flat. Clicks responded to protests by apologizing, pulling the advert and removing Tresemme products, and now other companies have joined in. Woolworths said it had taken all Tresemme products from its shelves with immediate effect. Similarly, Pick n Pay also confirmed that it had also removed all Tresemme products from its shelves after the outrage. The Shoprite Group, which owns stores such as Checkers, Hyper, Shoprite and the USave brands, also said it had engaged its supplier and removed all Tresemme products from their shelves. To politics now, a three-day national consultation on the makeup of Mali's transitional government begins today in the capital, Bamako. The talks come ahead of a deadline given by West African leaders for the appointment of civilian leaders by 15th of September. That's Tuesday next week. This follows consultative meetings held last weekend to agree on the terms of reference for Thursday's talks. Pressure is mounting on the military rulers, the National Committee for the Salvation of the People, to set up a civilian-led transitional government following the ouster of Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta on August the 18th. Senior junta officials led by Colonel Assimi Goïta is said to have been reaching out to various key personalities in an effort to boost their credibility, support their base and improve their public image. Meanwhile, the 5th June movement, the rally of the Patriotic Force, which galvanized the nation into pressing Mr. Keïta to leave office, has reiterated its call for a civilian political transition led by a civilian. Or religious leaders in southern Kaduna back here in Nigeria have accepted to forgive one another and collectively embrace peace for the progress and development of the region that has suffered long years of violence. At a peace summit aimed at developing a roadmap for achieving lasting peace in the area, both Christian and Muslim leaders highlight some major causes of past and recent conflicts in various communities in the zone. The meeting was convened by the Nigeria Christian Pilgrims Commission, NCPC, in Kafanchan.
Images of destruction have become a common sight in southern Kaduna. Hundreds, many of whom are children, have become homeless after fleeing from attacks that claimed many lives. Life in camps like this one is a daily hustle. Everyone files for the food, which usually is available once a day. Tired of the situation, this gathering has come together to seek ways of putting an end to the lingering violence in southern Kaduna. Kicking off the Peace Summit, the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Christian Pilgrims Commission explains its objective and selection of stakeholders.
Our mission here is to facilitate a peace process through dialogue and negotiations, as well as enhancing participation and cooperation among all stakeholders here present.
Community representatives bear their minds on the importance of the summit and its expected impact.
It's going to be a beginning, the first step to preparing a template with which we are going to use to establish lasting peace, not only in southern Kaduna, but for Nigeria.
At the time I was invited, I was scared of coming. But on a second thought, I had to come to know the real truth. Secondly, let's forget about what history our forefathers told us and live in peace with one another. Let's not dwell on the past, but embrace peace for the future generations.
A charge is issued to participants to take home as food for thought.
We cannot continue to spill blood here or see blood being shed. No, it's unacceptable. Let us emphasize the commonalities. If poverty is the common thing, and if we want to exorcise poverty, we have to work together as brothers and sisters.
Many will see this summit as a step in the right direction, and as plans towards achieving lasting peace are set in motion, the desire of all affected by the violence is that nothing derails its intentions.
In an effort to end the conflict, the United Nations mission in South Sudan has brought together national and state-level political leaders, as well as community elders, civil society and other key stakeholders for peace talks at a special forum in Juba. Thousands of families have been devastated by the vicious cycle of fighting that has plagued the Jonglei region of South Sudan for the past 6 months. More than 600 people have been killed during the violence between Dinka, Nua and Morle groups. Women and children have been abducted, villages and homes torched, and thousands of cattle stolen. At least 160,000 people are estimated to be displaced because of a combination of the conflict and flooding.
We have what we call a quadruple threat that we are facing in the name of conflict, hunger, flooding, and to which we can also add now COVID. Now, how are we able to work in an environment like that where the quadruple threat is increasing the level of vulnerability, making people much more poorer, and almost impossible for them to have the chance to get out of poverty and move toward a life that they can actually enjoy the fruit of the peace that is happening in the country? That's not possible if we don't deal with the underlying factor that we are facing.
Every single community is right, whether it be Dinka, Nua, Morle, all of you are right, all of you have been attacked, all of you have been aggrieved, all of you have had people taken, everybody has had their cattle stolen and people being killed. All three communities. But that means that all three communities are also in some ways guilty of doing that to the others as well. So as I say, it is a race to the bottom, and we don't want that to see. We don't want to see the people of Jonglei getting poorer and poorer and needing more and more outside humanitarian help.
We feel that if we get this support, logistical support, financial support, political support, if we get all this support, we should be able to solve this problem. But if we don't, the catastrophe of it would be so great, which means that the entire country of South Sudan will go back into a war. And we don't want that to happen.
It's important that these people come together and have this agreement, because we know that in the fighting over the last few months, it wasn't just happening on the ground in isolation to what was happening here. There were others that were supplying weapons and things that were fueling the conflict. So we need now to have an agreement here, and that agreement can be taken out into around Jonglei, and we can talk about peace and how we move forward.
Guinea's constitutional court, the highest in the West African country, has approved 82-year-old President Alpha Condé's bid for a third term in next month's election. The court also approved 11 other candidates, including the main opposition challenger, Cellou Dalein Diallo. There have been months of protests against Mr. Condé's re-election bid after he pushed through a constitutional change in a referendum in March, which allowed him to stand for a third term. At least 30 people are reported to have died in the protests. Mr. Condé was first elected in 2010, then re-elected in 2015. On Tuesday, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari called on West African leaders to stick to their constitutional term limits, which he described as a source of crisis and political tension in the region. Meanwhile, the former ruling party in Côte d'Ivoire, the Democratic Party of Côte d'Ivoire African Democratic Rally, has threatened to boycott October's general elections if conditions to make them fair and transparent are not met. Its executive secretary, Maurice Kaku, said the party wants the Electoral Commission to be changed. The party's presidential candidate, Henry Konan Bedie, will formally be presented to delegates on the 12th of September in Yamoussoukro, the country's political capital. President Alassane Ouattara is also running for a controversial third term in the polls after his pick for a successor, Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly, suddenly died. Moving to North Africa, Algerian journalists and activists are protesting to demand the release of a number of jailed journalists, criticizing the government for what they call restrictions on press freedoms. Less than a year after Algeria elected its president, Abdelmajid Tebboune, journalists say restrictions on press freedom are weighing on them more than ever. Calls to ease restrictions on the freedom of expression have been renewed as prosecutors called for a 4-year prison sentence against one independent journalist, Khalid Drareni, in an appeals court in Algiers. The appeals verdict is expected on September the 15th, 2020, and Drareni was arrested in March and sentenced to 3 years in prison with a 50,000 dinar fine. However, the Algerian government says there are no prisoners of conscience in the country and that charges against jailed journalists are not related to their professional work. Now, following various death threats to Nobel laureate Denis Mukwege, his family and his clinic are now under the watch of the United Nations. The gynecologist has been placed under the guard of United Nations security forces in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He and his colleagues have treated tens of thousands of rape victims, and he went on to share the Nobel Prize in 2018. Dr. Mukwege said he received death threats after condemning the July massacre in Kipupu, a village in South Kivu province, and this prompted hundreds of people to protest, calling for his protection. Dr. Mukwege is based near the town of Bukavu at the Panzi Hospital, which treats women who have been raped. And since he survived an attack at his home in 2012 in which a security guard was killed, the UN police officers had been stationed at the hospital but left in May because of a coronavirus outbreak among the peacekeepers. But now they have been reinstated. Mauritius Fisheries Ministry has banned the sale and consumption of fish and seafood caught in a southeastern lagoon after samples from the area returned positive tests of traces for hydrocarbons. About 1,000 tons of oil spilled into a sanctuary for rare wildlife after the Japanese-owned ship MV Wakashio struck a coral reef on July the 25th. The ministry says the National Coast Guard and the Fisheries Protection Services are working together to ensure round-the-clock surveillance and make sure that no fishing takes place in the affected area. On the September 12th, a second rally has been scheduled to protest at the authorities' handling of the massive oil spill in Mahebog. The coronavirus pandemic shut schools in Nigeria since the month of March, and this is a country with more children out of education than any other country, 13 million, according to the United Nations. The virus poses even more threats to the students' futures. However, organizations like Slum to School have tried to fill the void, giving mobile tablets and laptops to teachers and pupils in the Makoko slum for live remote lessons, normally an unaffordable solution for the children.
Outside her home in the Lagos slum of Makoko, Esther Ikechukwu stacks 2 upturned buckets, places a handbag on top, rests a tablet against it. Her balancing act finished, the 17-year-old's desk is ready for school.
Stay safe online. That was last week Friday. About that, I bad.
As the coronavirus pandemic struck Nigeria, its schools shut in March. Trying to fill that void are organizations like Slum to School, a Lagos-based charity that works across Africa to educate children growing up in poorer communities.
The fact is that I miss school, but what Slum to School is doing right now makes me not to kind of miss school like that, because I'm not really missing. I'm better than some other children out there.
Almost 1,000 children are learning remotely through Slum to School, which has 30 teachers. It is targeting 10,000 students by year end.
We have lifelong skills and 21st century skills that are very important, ensuring that they understand how to collaborate, how to negotiate, how to lead, how to take initiative, how to manage projects. And so it's a long journey. These are young people we've been supporting for the past 8 years. And so this is just another way to keep them learning.
But the slum's lack of power means difficulty charging electronics, and Esther's outdoor desk is a solution for weak mobile signal indoors. She juggles between video and audio as the network drops. Slum to School tries to combat the electricity issues by providing power banks and solar charging kiosks.
We've had conversations about the reality of over 13 million children who are out of school in Nigeria. And we do not necessarily have to wait until there's a classroom to put them. Those kids can still learn in their community through the cluster learning program. So this is a program we think is going to be very sustainable and very impactful.
Through Slum to School, most of my friends now are in school, doing well, not like they were before, no longer the kind of people they used to be. They've really transformed lives in Makoko.
We are going to be having certain revisions as well.
Long school breaks can cut children out of education as they are pushed to support poor families with menial work, said Otto Orandam, the charity's founder. For Esther, she successfully juggles trading at her mother's shop after her early morning virtual class.
And that's where we end Network Africa today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Adigo.